And the truth is, as a leader, you will have an impact. You have everything inside of you to build the greatness in others because there is greatness within you. The truth is, you're here for a reason. You have a purpose. And there is nothing more noble than doing the work that you do as a school leader.
Well, welcome back, everybody. So excited for this episode of Leading Through Unprecedented Times. I'm your host, Tom Murray, and today with me, I have 11-time best-selling author, and you already will recognize his work, I'm sure. Jon Gordon is with me today. Jon, how you doing, my friend? What an honor it is to have you on the podcast.
Doing great, Tom. Great to be with you and honored to be sharing with you today.
Yeah. So this podcast, Jon, I'm sure so many of the superintendents and principals around the country are probably familiar with this work, but I want you to give them some insight. You know, they've been leading through this pandemic, getting battered on social media left and right, all the decisions that they've had to face. You've done so much work around the power of positive leadership, you know, one of your best-selling books in that regard as well. Talk to us about the power of positive leadership in schools, because as superintendents and principals, they really set the tone. They set that thermometer for their building. So talk to us about that if you could.
Well, this has been one of the most challenging times for a leader, especially a school district leader or a principal, because no matter what your decision is, it's not going to be the right one in some people's eyes. You cannot make everyone happy during this time. Like, no one was happy with every decision during this time. And so it is really challenging. That's why positive leadership is more important than ever. I did a conference virtually for the Suffolk County superintendents of schools early in the pandemic, and we talked about these very challenges that they were experiencing. But one thing I do know is that a crisis will reveal who you are, what you value, and what you believe. Like, who are you as a leader? I realized during this time, I was an encourager. I realized that I valued relationships. I realized I actually liked people, Tom. By being away from people, I realized I liked them. And so I valued relationships. And then also I believed in this work more than ever. Like, I am now convicted more than ever to share this message, to do this work, because I have seen how positive leaders in school districts, in companies, in sports teams, they were able to lead their teams through this time because of their positive leadership. They built a culture. They had a vision of where they were going. They led with optimism and belief through the challenges. You've got to feed yourself every day in order to feed others. Like, if you don't have it, you can't share it. So a big part of positive leadership is feeding yourself each day with the positivity that you need in order to lead others and impact others, because you are contagious. Like, every leader is contagious. We've been hearing that in a negative way, but hope is contagious. Kindness is contagious. Love is contagious. Passion is contagious. And so every day you can be contagious. And a leader is a dealer in hope. So you want to be contagious with that hope. Hey, we're going through this challenge, but here's where we're going. Yes, we're facing this setback, but here's where we're going now. I know you may not be happy with this decision, but I had to make this decision, and here's why. And here's what I believe. And here is how we're going to move forward. And they will respect you for your decision. They will respect you because of your conviction and because of the vision of where you're taking everyone. So I know we're sharing a lot here where you can unpack this in a huge way, right? If we really had a few hours, and that's what our workshops do. That's what our trainings do. But ultimately, knowing where you're going, why you're going there, is essential. And so having that vision and purpose. We don't get burned out because of what we do. We get burned out because we forget why we do it. And so your vision, your purpose, the culture you're building, and then leading with that optimism and belief is essential. And then the relationships you build along the way. And so what I realized during this time was, if there was a gap in your leadership, it actually developed into a canyon during COVID, a canyon, because obviously there was a lack of communication. There was a lack of connection. There wasn't a relationship. There wasn't trust. And so people didn't really want to follow you, or they didn't trust you in order to follow you. And so the communication you had, the relationships you had during this time were more important than ever. and investing in those relationships was key. I was talking to a lot of leaders in the business world, and they were saying, I had some of the most meaningful, important, and essential conversations I've ever had with my people during this time. Even when we weren't in person, we were not in person, and yet we were still having incredible conversations, developing really great relationships during this time. And so I really believe that now was a time to become more or become less. You could improve or you could actually go backwards. And the good news is it's not too late. If you're feeling bad about what happened in the past and maybe you didn't lead as well as you could have, guess what? You could start leading that way right now. Don't beat yourself up. Give yourself some grace because it really was hard. It was difficult. No one has ever prepared us for a moment like this. This is a moment like no other in history. You were in a once in a lifetime or probably 5 lifetimes moment experience. And so if you didn't lead perfectly, it's okay. It's about what can we do as we go forward.
Yeah, John, so well said. And a few moments ago, you said the word hope. And the reason that we started this podcast just a few weeks into the pandemic was to highlight folks like you, school and district leaders that could give us hope as they navigated all the unknown. I want to ask you a follow-up question, because I know in some of the trainings that you do with schools and leaders, in this area and growing leadership, it's on dealing with negativity. And, let's face it, social media can be used for the good. And by the way, if you're listening to the podcast and you're not following John on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you are missing out, because he is somebody I admire and look to in his positive messaging literally day in and day out. But John, let's face it, if I'm a superintendent, maybe it's at a board meeting, maybe I'm getting blasted on the latest Facebook post from the district. How can you support districts or not you personally, but how do you give recommendations to school and district leaders when the negative comes their way and how to handle that?
Well, first and foremost, we have to train people to be positive leaders. We have to develop that. You put a great leader in a school, that leader will transform that school, just as a great coach will transform a football team. You could have a dysfunctional football program. You put in a great coach, within a few years, that team is going to be successful. Same thing with the leadership in our schools. So I am passionate about developing leaders in our schools. We have the Power of a Positive Schools program where we take the power of positive leadership. We work with superintendents and principals, and we have a full day training where we teach the principals on the power of positive leadership. We help them implement those principles in their school. We also have a train the trainer program if superintendents are interested, where you can actually train several people in your district to be the trainers of this program. It's a lot more affordable that way. And you can then train every single leader in your district. I am so passionate about this because I know the impact it has. And we decided to do this because we've been having these trainings and public trainings now for a few years, and they're for business leaders, sports leaders, school leaders, and about half the people that come are school leaders. So it's really cool, though. The school leaders are interacting with business leaders and sports leaders. But we said, you know what? We need a program that takes, these principles, these practices, and really brings it to schools and districts and allows them to implement these principles. And so you have to make sure you're developing leaders during this time. You have to invest in their leadership, in their growth. It doesn't happen by osmosis. And as you develop these leaders, they will better lead the schools. And why are we doing that? Well, because we know we're here for the students. We're here to equip them, to develop them, to help them reach their full potential. And you need a leadership in your schools that does that for your teachers, helps lift them up. We know that a principal that has a great relationship with a teacher, we know that teacher performance goes up. We know that when you have a great relationship as a teacher with your student, test scores go up. So it ultimately comes down to the relationships you have, the leadership you provide. Now, this is not Pollyanna positive, right? When we talk about positivity, this is not just about hope and love and kindness. This is like the real stuff that makes great leaders and great teams great. There are skills that you can actually implement, that you can develop as a leader that will make you a better leader, a positive leader. It's not about ignoring reality. It's about maintaining optimism, belief, and faith in order to create a better reality. It's about the fundamentals of building great relationships, communication, connection, commitment, and caring. It's about love and accountability. This is the hallmark of great leadership, the two together. Where are you in the continuum? In our training, we actually ask you where you are. Too much love or too much accountability? Where do you fit? And we know that everyone fits somewhere on the continuum. And we all need maybe a little more accountability or a little more love. And it's fun to take people through that training to realize where they are, where they need to be. And just focusing on that is going to improve your leadership. I work with Clemson football and Dabo Sweeney for the past 9 years. So I've seen his love and accountability. I work with the LA Rams and Sean McVay, the Dodgers and Dave Roberts. I've seen his leadership. I've worked with the greatest leaders, on the planet, right? Alan Mullally. I've worked with such incredible leaders. I've seen firsthand how they lead their organizations and teams. And then we bring this framework and these principles and practices to school leaders to now lead their schools. And I've also, over the years, worked with hundreds and hundreds of school districts and school leaders, and I've learned so much from them. So I don't know all the answers. I'm a student first and a teacher second. And so I'm always learning and growing from all the leaders I get to meet. And then from there, I share what I've learned and the best practices.
Yeah. And one of the takeaways that I just had there is you're working with some of the utmost professionals. You're talking the professional football teams, the basketball teams, the baseball teams. Here they are at the highest points in their games, still having somebody like you come in and coach, come in and support. And so I think it's easy at times as leadership, if we've been in a position for a long time, running a school building, running a district, to get complacent or to just kind of keep having your narrow lens, and to have that push, that coaching, regardless of the level that you're on, by folks like you or by others from the outside to influence that vision is so, so vital. I want to dive further into your whole work around the power of positive schools, because let's face it, the pandemic has amplified fear, anxiety, emails that may have been sent 2 years ago and nobody thought anything of it. And now there's one or two trigger words because everybody's always seeming to be on edge. And you're doing a lot of work, and you started to touch on it there around, the influence around culture, the influence. Obviously, we talked about the leadership side there as well, but the teamwork, the performance. So talk to us, if you could, about some of those principles when you're working with schools, some of those real positive principles in developing a school culture, because we know culture is foundational. At Future Ready Schools, we talk about leadership and culture being the foundation of all this work, which completely is in line with your thinking and the work that you do. But talk to us about some of those principles for superintendents and for principals to develop the culture that our kids need, that innovative culture, that fail forward culture. And what does that look like? Talk to us about some of those principles, if you would.
Well, culture is everything. It's not one thing, it's everything. And everyone in your school creates the culture of it. It's not just leadership. Culture is dynamic. It's not static. So every day we are creating our culture by what we think, by what we say, by what we do, what we value, what we believe, what we stand for. So a big part of creating a great culture is to know what you stand for. In our training and our work, we actually help the principal, we help the leadership define, what do we stand for? What do we want to be known for? And once you know what you stand for, every decision you make is easy. And then you get people to buy into the culture. It's not just your culture, it's everyone's culture. And that's the power of the Energy Bus for Schools program. We have an Energy Bus for Schools program where we work with elementary schools. And it's really cool. We implement the Energy Bus in your school. We help you implement it. We give you a curriculum. It's a web-based program for you to be able to do it. We also have a la carte training if you want that. And as part of being a certified school, we actually have a monthly coaching where you're going to join other principals from around the country who are building their cultures, who are sharing their best practices. And what we have found through the research that we've done is that when you focus on the culture and you invest in the root, you get the great fruit, right? So the Energy Bus is just a tool. It's a vehicle to help you build your culture with your values, with your beliefs, with the common dialogue and language that you're talking about. No energy vampires allowed, right? We're not going to allow negativity to sabotage our school. Gandhi said, I will not let anyone walk through my mind with their dirty feet. Key for leadership, key for teachers. With all the negativity on social media and everything you're dealing with, you mentioned that earlier, we stay positive. We are more positive than the negativity that we face. We build a culture so strong on the inside, we're able to withstand all the forces on the outside. And once you invest in that culture with your values, your beliefs, your purpose, knowing what we stand for. You're talking about your vision. You have your standards of behavior. This is how we do things here. This is how we have difficult conversations. This is how we're going to bring up the difficult things we need to talk about as a staff, as a team. We improve our communication and our relationships. And once you're doing these things, you're building your culture every single day. And as part of the Energy Bus for Schools program, you're actually working with other leaders doing it. So I'm really excited and proud of that, what we've created for schools with that. But for middle school and high schools, you can also implement the Energy Bus, but you can also implement, again, the principles from the Power of Positive Leadership and the Power of a Positive Team. With schools, we come together with a school and we bring the Power of a Positive Team to a school as well, where we're going to help you build a stronger staff, a stronger, more connected staff. We know that the key to student learning, I'm sure you know this, is John Hattie's work, collective teacher efficacy. Does the staff believe that they can impact their students' lives? Do they believe they can do extraordinary things? And that belief, just that belief of the staff, actually determines whether those students perform at a higher level. It's incredible when you really think about it. It shows the power of belief that this is not just some ethereal stuff. Oh, this is positive. No, when a collective group of teachers come together and believe that they can impact their students' lives, they do. And so there's a lot of power in knowing that. But how do we do that? Well, you got to become a connected team to be a committed team. The more connected you are, the more committed you will be. So as a leader, your job is to develop connections with each person you lead. And your job is to help your staff become more connected to each other. When you do that, you will get more commitment as a staff to each other and then to the students. And I see this in sports teams. What I love about sports is you can actually see it in the course of a year, how strong that team is. Do they withstand all of the negativity and the forces in the course of a season? You can see if these principles work in that, right? And I have working with all these different teams. Tampa Bay Lightning last year, I went and spoke to the team. They won the Stanley Cup. I'm not the reason for their success, though, because I've also spoken to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And so you can see firsthand how the principles don't work when they're not applied, when they're not ingrained. So you can see who's implementing them, who's not. And so are we really becoming a connected team? Are we having those difficult conversations? Is there a lack of trust? All these same principles help a school become strong. So when you are dealing with the fire that's going on in the world, when you are dealing with the conflict and all of the challenges, do you run away from each other or do you run towards each other? Do you fight against each other or do you fight for each other? And so I want superintendents, I want principals to make sure that they're building really strong teams, strong staffs. I want to help them develop positive leaders in their schools who will lead these staffs and lead these students into the future. We need positive leaders to do that. And it starts at the elementary school level, helping to build a culture from the very beginning. And the Energy Bus is just a great vehicle to do that. You can use a lot of other resources. Again, I'm not the only one out there. There are other great resources. I want to make that clear. We're just talking about the things that I'm doing and what I'm seeing and what's working. And since I live it firsthand every single day, I see the power of doing that. So your culture, first and foremost, as a leader, what you build in terms of your culture will determine ultimately the results that you have, how your teachers show up every day, how your students learn, the signage on the wall. It's determined by your culture. And so we always start there with an organization. We always start there with the leadership in terms of defining the culture. And then what does it look like to invest in the root versus focusing on the fruit? You know, too many schools we go in, we're focusing on the numbers and we're focusing on the standardized test scores and how well the performance is. And yes, we have to measure those numbers. We do have to measure them, but we do so knowing that the measurement of the fruit is just a byproduct of how well we're investing in the root. And if you build your culture, you build your people, if everyone is on a mission to do something amazing in that school to make an impact in those students' lives, we will see extraordinary results. Every school today, you know it, everyone has a mission statement, but only the great ones have people who are on a mission. So let's create schools that are on a mission. Let's build a culture that drives the mission.
Yeah, so beautifully said. And if you're listening to this, I will personally endorse the energy bus work. I've seen it firsthand. And as a former elementary principal, secondary principal, it is some of the best work that's out there. And I will tell you, getting to work with so many school and district leaders across the country every year and through Future Ready Schools, the core tenets that we see in some of the best schools and districts across the country perfectly align, John, with what you're talking about there as well. Let me ask you a quick follow up to that. And I know our time is dwindling down here, but one of the aspects that you talk about is sustaining that culture, because quite often it's the beginning of that year kickoff, everybody's rah getting excited, but it gets hard to sustain it. But around performance, give some recommendations if you could in a minute or two. If I'm a principal, I'm a superintendent, I've got a teacher that's maybe not meeting the expectations, not kind of carrying their weight, how do you have some of those needed conversations? Because we know if we avoid that as well, that's also a culture killer. And so talk to us about that and any recommendations that you have for some of those more challenging but needed conversations.
This is not about a theme, right? We're not going to show up in the beginning and just do a rah and talk about it. This is about sustained performance, focusing on what we stand for and focusing on the standards. So here's the great thing. When you create standards, this is what we expect. This is our standard, and everyone knows the standard. Then you can actually speak to the standard in terms of love and accountability. See, what we're big on is love tough, not tough love, but love tough. If your team knows you love them, you earn the right to challenge them. So you've invested a lot of time and energy in your relationship with that teacher who may be not performing at their highest potential. You've taken the time to talk to them and coach them and be there for them, which is essential. Like, they know you care about them. Now is that difficult conversation to say, hey, we've talked about our standards. We know this is what we are striving towards, and you're not meeting them. You're falling short of them. And here's what I'm seeing. And if you knew someone had your best interest at heart, would you be more open to their feedback? Of course you would. So this is a great tenet of leadership. Invest in the relationship, build that relationship, and then you can challenge them. If you start with the tough instead of the love, and you're always pushing and challenging, they're going to rebel, right? Rules without relationship lead to rebellion. Andy Stanley said that. And so you have to make sure you're investing in that relationship first and foremost, setting the standards along the way. So I'm really big at the cultural level. We talk about our standards. We talk about what we stand for. We're having these meetings to talk about our principles that we're living by. Everyone understands the principles. Everyone knows the plan. They embrace the plan. They relentlessly work towards the plan. This is all part of our program. And as we do that, as they do that, then it's easy to talk about how we're not living up to it, how we're not meeting it, because you've done it at the cultural level. And now you can have the individual coaching conversations that need to happen. And you need to show them a way forward. Call them up to greatness. Don't call them out. Hey, I know you could do more. What's going on in your life? Is there a challenge? Are you facing some personal problems? How can I help you? How can I help you get to where you want to be and where I need you to be? And then you can have those kind of conversations. But they're not easy. It takes more work to lead this way. We know it does, but guess what? Instead of always putting out fires, you are building a masterpiece along the way, an incredible work of art. Instead of always putting out the fire and always seeing things crumble around you, you're building something great every day. And you're going to enjoy your work a lot more. You're going to work harder, but you're going to enjoy it more. You're going to learn more. You're going to grow more. And at the end, you're going to have so much more of a feeling of peace and joy and accomplishment, seeing the change that you make and the difference you make.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Well, I know we've got to run, so I've got one final question for you. We're going to have thousands of superintendents, principals, and folks listening to you in this podcast as they continue to lead through adversity moving forward. What's one piece of advice that you have for them?
We share this in our trainings. I got to share it here. It's the advice of Dr. James Gills. It's the best advice I ever heard. He's the only person on the planet to complete 6 double Ironman triathlons. That's a double Ironman. That means you do an Ironman, a day later you do another one. And the last time he did it, he was 59 years old. And he was asked how he did it. He said this: I've learned to talk to myself instead of listen to myself. He said, if I listen, I hear all the fear, all the negativity, all the doubt, all the reasons why I can't finish this race. But if I talk to myself, I can feed myself with the words and the encouragement that I need to keep on moving forward. And so leaders, principals, superintendents, we need to talk to ourselves instead of listen to ourselves. The negative thoughts are always going to come in. You're not doing enough. You didn't do enough last year. you're not going to make it. The team's not going to be successful. The school's not going to have an impact. But guess what? You would never choose those negative thoughts. They're not coming from you, because who would ever choose to have a negative thought? You would never choose one. They're always coming in from consciousness. No one has ever found a thought inside of your brain. When you're sleeping or dreaming and having a nightmare, are you choosing those thoughts? No, you're not choosing them, right? They're just coming in. So when the thoughts come in, don't believe the lies that they tell. Continually speak truth to those lies. And the truth is, as a leader, you will have an impact. You have everything inside of you to build the greatness in others, because there is greatness within you. The truth is, you're here for a reason. You have a purpose. And there is nothing more noble than doing the work that you do as a school leader. Teachers changed my life. I would not be who I am today if it wasn't for the teachers and coaches in my life. It's why I am so passionate about this, and why I speak to so many school districts. I lower my fee to go speak to districts around the country, because I love making an impact. So every August, every January, I'm going to various school districts, speaking to all the teachers, all the staff. I do a lot of convocations, and I love doing that because I love speaking life into the people who speak life into others. If I can influence them, they can influence others. And together we have a huge, huge impact on the mindset, on the purpose, and ultimately the impact that we can make in the lives of our students and our kids around the country. And ultimately, that's what it's all about. So it's why I do this. And it's why we started the Power of Positive Schools, to make an even greater impact, because we realized, okay, a talk is one thing, but then you have to train, you have to implement, you have to help create practices and habits. And that's where you see lasting change. This is not about one-offs, lasting change. And that's why we do the training. So thanks for sharing this message. Thanks for allowing me to talk to superintendents and leaders. As I said, I'm passionate about this work. And if people want to reach me, they can reach me at jongordon.com, JON-Gordon.com, or they can go to Power Positive Schools or EnergyBusSchools.com, Energy Bus Schools. And just Google Power Positive Schools and you'll see our work there. And also EnergyBusSchools.com, you'll see our work there. Or just go to JON-Gordon.com and you'll find all the stuff from there.
And Jon, thank you so much for speaking life into us today and investing the time. That's Jon Gordon, everybody. Jon, thanks for being on, my friend.
Hey, Tom, keep up the amazing work that you're doing. I love the impact you're having as well.
Thanks, my friend.